We live in a world that's noise, yet full of people who feel unheard, especially men. And I want to start with something that might feel uncomfortable, but it's true for many young men today. You were never really taught how to use your voice. I don't mean just physically speaking. I mean using your voice to express who you really are, to show the world what you think, how you feel, what you stand for. You may have been taught how to speak to survive, to answer questions in school, to talk when it's required. But speaking to connect, speaking to be known, that wasn't part of the lesson, was it? Because let's be honest, most of us were told, directly or indirectly, that emotions were dangerous, that speaking up was risky, that vulnerability was weakness, so over time many young men start pulling back. Their voice becomes small, quiet, maybe physically loud, but emotionally muted. And here's the truth no one says enough. When you silence your voice, you start losing your sense of value. It shows up everywhere. You go on a date and don't say what you really feel. You sit in a conversation, unsure how to jump in. You hold back in moments where your heart is screaming, "Speak up." And instead, you retreat into silence or sarcasm or trying to sound tough. It's not because you don't want to connect. It's because no one ever taught you how. The voice is our primary instrument of connection. It's the bridge between your inner world and the outside world. And like any instrument, if you've never been taught how to use it, it'll sound clumsy, timid, or forced. And here's something else. We often mimic what we see. If the male voices you grew up around were angry, cold, dismissive, or emotionally shut down, then that became your template. You picked it up, not because it worked, but because it was what was modeled. So let me say this as clearly as I can. Your voice is not broken. You are not bad at talking. You are simply undertrained. Because when a man learns how to use his voice, his real voice, he becomes magnetic. Not because he's performing, but because he's present. He speaks with clarity, with tone, with care, and with emotional truth. This doesn't require a deep radio voice. It doesn't require fancy vocabulary. It requires alignment between your breath, your tone, your truth, and that can be learned. But first, it starts with a decision that you are allowed to be heard, that you are worthy of taking up vocal space, that your presence, your sound matters. Imagine this, a moment where you speak in a room and people naturally quiet down. Not because you demanded it, but because your voice invited it. Imagine being able to look someone in the eye, speak from your chest, not just your throat, and feel that sense of, yes, I meant that. Imagine not rushing, not mumbling, not shrinking, but speaking in a way that says, I'm here, and I have something to say. That's not a fantasy. That's the power of using the voice you were never taught to use. So today, I want to begin a journey with you, not just to teach vocal techniques, but to help you recover something sacred, your presence, your power, and your ability to connect, because people don't just hear sound, they hear you. And when you learn to use your voice clearly, truthfully, emotionally, people will not only listen. They'll remember what you said, and more importantly, you'll finally believe that you were worth listening to. Before anyone else can truly listen to you, you must first learn to listen to yourself. Now, that might sound abstract at first. You might think, what does that even mean? I hear myself speak every day. But hearing yourself and listening to yourself are two very different things. Listening is an act of presence. It's a quiet, internal tuning, and most men have never been given space, let alone permission, to do that. You see, for so many of us, the voice becomes just a tool to get things done, to answer, to explain, to argue, to prove. But the voice, your voice, was never meant to be just transactional. It was meant to be relational. a way of connecting your inner truth to the outer world. But how can you speak your truth if you haven't been listening for it? Here's what happens. You walk into a room and your voice feels off. Maybe shaky, maybe too sharp, or maybe flat and disengaged. You wonder, why can't I just sound confident? But confidence in your voice is not built by pushing harder or speaking louder. It's built by knowing what's going on inside you in the quiet. That means asking yourself, what am I feeling right now? What do I really want to say here? What am I afraid of? Because if you're carrying fear, fear of being judged, of being misunderstood, of being rejected, it shows in your tone. Your words might sound polished, but the energy behind them is hesitant. You can't fake presence. You can't fake emotional clarity. People feel it. And the truth is, your voice is always telling a story, whether you realize it or not. Let me give you an example. Have you ever been on a date or in a conversation where you're trying to sound impressive? Maybe you're talking about your goals, your accomplishments, trying to show you've got your life together, but afterward, you feel strangely hollow. That's because you were speaking from a mask, not from your center, and people can feel the disconnect, even if they can't name it. The real you, the you with doubts, hopes, heartbreak, vision, and depth. That voice often goes unspoken. But that's the voice people actually want to hear. That's the voice that creates connection. That's the voice that makes someone lean in and think, there's something real about him. And it starts not with what you say, but with what you notice. Notice when you speak too fast. Notice when your chest tightens before you say something vulnerable. Notice the moment you want to interrupt, or the moment you hold something back out of fear. Those are internal signals. Those are invitations to pause, breathe, and listen deeper. Because your voice is shaped by your emotions, your breath, your nervous system, your self-permission. If you never feel safe to feel, you'll never feel safe to speak. So give yourself that space, even if it's 30 seconds in the car before a conversation, even if it's journaling before a date, even if it's one deep breath before you walk into a room and say, I belong here. When you start listening to yourself, not to judge, but to understand, your voice becomes clearer, stronger, more stable. You won't have to force impact. It will happen naturally, because you'll be speaking from alignment, not anxiety. And that's what people respond to. You want to know why some voices draw us in instantly. It's not just because of tone or pitch. It's because those voices are grounded in self-awareness. They are voices of people who have listened to themselves first. So let that be your next step before you speak. Pause, breathe, tune in. What's true for me right now? And can I bring that truth into the room? Because when you listen to yourself, you make space for the world to do the same. You can have the best intentions in the world. You can want to speak truthfully, be present, be real. But if your voice is caught in unconscious habits, people won't hear what your heart is trying to say. And that's one of the most frustrating experiences for a man, when you're trying, but something about how you're coming across just doesn't land. Maybe the woman across the table checks out. Maybe your friend seems distracted. Maybe even you don't like how you sound. And you're left wondering, why does it feel like I'm invisible even when I'm speaking? Often the reason isn't your words. It's your habits, your vocal defaults, what I call voice killers. They're subtle. You don't always notice them. But they break trust, they push people away, they shut down connection. Let me walk you through 4 of the biggest ones I see in men all the time. The first is monotone, flat, even no emotional range. Now I get it. A lot of men fall into monotone not because they don't feel, but because they don't want to feel too much. They don't want to seem needy or vulnerable or dramatic, so they keep everything even, safe. But the problem is, monotone doesn't signal strength. It signals disconnection. A flat voice tells the listener there's nothing going on here, even when there is. It's a false calm that repels the very connection you're trying to build. The second is mumbling. This one's huge. It usually comes from a mix of low confidence and fear of rejection. You speak under your breath, cut off your words, or speak into your chest instead of out to the room. The psychology behind mumbling is often, if I'm not heard clearly, I can't be judged clearly. But here's the thing, if people have to work to hear you, they often won't. And what's worse, it makes you look like you don't believe in what you're saying, even when you do. The third killer is rushing. This happens a lot when you're nervous. You speed through your words, you talk without space, without breath. Maybe you're excited, or maybe you're trying to get it over with, but rushed speech sends a signal, this isn't safe. People feel anxious when you speak that way, even if they can't name it. A voice that rushes doesn't give the listener time to absorb. It doesn't say, I'm here with you. It says, I want out of this moment, and in connection, that moment is everything. The last is defensive tone. This one is tricky because you may not feel defensive, but your voice is sharp, cutting, overly firm, or closed off. It might sound like confidence, but it's not. It's protection, and often this comes from wounds. Past moments where your voice wasn't heard, where you were shut down. So now you speak with a tone that says, I won't let that happen again. But in doing so, you're pushing away people who are never going to hurt you. Especially in dating, this tone can make a woman feel like there's no space for softness, for safety, for emotional depth. Here's the good news. All of these habits are changeable. They are not your destiny. They are just defaults. And once you become aware of them, you can start shifting them. You don't need to speak like anyone else. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present and intentional. That means practicing tone. Range, clarity, it means breathing before you speak. It means listening to how you sound and asking yourself, does this match who I really am? Because when your voice matches your truth, that's when people really listen. That's when conversations change. That's when connection becomes possible. So if any of those voice killers sound familiar, don't judge yourself. Just begin to notice and know the moment you do, your voice is already starting to change. Let's talk about your toolkit. Because yes, the voice is emotional, it's deeply personal, it reflects your fears, your story, your identity. But it's also physical, which means it can be trained. And when you understand how to use your voice as an instrument, not just a reaction, it becomes magnetic. It draws people in, not through volume or bravado, but through subtlety, intention, and presence. There are 4 key tools that every powerful speaker and every connected man must learn to master. Pace. Pitch, pause, power. Let's start with pace. Pace is the rhythm of your words. Too fast, and you sound anxious. Too slow, and you risk losing engagement. But the sweet spot, that's where trust lives. When you slow down, not in a performative way, but because you feel safe enough to. People feel safe listening to you. You give your words weight. You allow your thoughts to land. A well-paced voice says, I'm not in a rush to prove anything. I'm here with you now. Then comes pitch. This isn't about singing. It's about color. Monotone voices feel dull because there's no emotional range. A voice that rises and falls naturally with feeling holds attention. It makes you human. If you want someone to care, let them feel the emotion in your voice. That might mean raising your pitch slightly when you share something exciting, or lowering it gently when you say something vulnerable. It's about letting your voice breathe with feeling. Next is pause. This is one of the most underused, underrated tools in your vocal arsenal. Most people are terrified of silence, so they fill every space. But the pause, that's where power lies. A pause creates tension, it gives listeners time to absorb, and most importantly, it shows confidence. A man who pauses isn't unsure. He's anchored. He knows that silence is not absence, it's emphasis. And finally, power. Now, this is not just about being loud. It's about resonance, presence, how fully you show up in your voice. Do you speak from your throat or from your chest? Are you pushing or are you grounded? True vocal power is rooted in the breath. It's felt, not forced. When you speak with power, people don't just hear your words, they feel your conviction. They don't just listen, they trust. Now here's the beautiful thing. These tools are available to you. Right now, they don't require you to be someone else. They require you to be more of yourself, but with awareness. When you change your pace, people feel safe. When you shift pitch, people stay engaged. When you pause, people reflect. And when you speak with power, people remember, this isn't about sounding perfect. It's about sounding true. And when you combine these tools with authenticity, when your technique aligns with your heart, you become unforgettable. So I invite you to practice. Slow down, breathe deeper, listen to yourself, record your voice, play it back. Ask, does this sound like someone I would listen to? Does this sound like the man I want to be? Because your voice is not just sound. It's story, it's signal, it's self-respect. And when you learn to master your voice, you begin to master how the world experiences you. Let's cut through the noise, because this is where most people, especially men, get stuck when it comes to speaking, especially in relationships or vulnerable moments. They try to perform. They try to sound confident instead of being connected. They worry so much about saying the right thing, they forget to say the real thing. But I want you to hear this clearly. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present. Performance is rooted in fear. Presence is rooted in trust. Trust in yourself. Trust in the moment. Trust that who you are as you are is enough to create connection. Now I get it. You've probably been told, directly or indirectly, that to be a man means to have it all together. To never show doubt. To impress. To project control. But here's the truth. Performance is exhausting. And even worse, it doesn't work. Because people, especially women, don't connect with performance. They connect with energy, with truth, with the small, raw moments where your guard is down and your soul steps forward. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a conversation and felt like you were saying all the right things, but still, the person wasn't connecting with you? That's the cost of performance. It sounds polished, but it feels hollow. Now think of a moment, even a tiny one, when someone said something unpolished, unfiltered, but real. Maybe it was a friend admitting he was scared. Maybe it was someone simply saying, I don't know what to say right now, but I'm here. That kind of moment. It hits you in the heart, because presence doesn't need to perform. It needs to feel. Authenticity isn't about being raw all the time, or oversharing. It's about congruence. It's when your voice, your tone, your body language, and your words are aligned. When you speak and what you say matches how you feel inside. And here's what's wild, the moment you drop the act, you actually become more compelling. Your tone softens, your breath steadies, you look people in the eye without trying to dominate them. You stop trying to win conversations and you start participating in them. You become real, and real is rare. Especially in a world of edited, filtered, curated everything, authenticity isn't just attractive. It's magnetic, it's healing, it's unforgettable. So how do you move from performance to presence? You start by telling the truth. To yourself, you ask, what am I actually feeling right now? You admit when you're nervous. You allow space for silence. You let your tone carry emotion, even if it trembles. and you stop overthinking what people want to hear and start saying what you need to say from a grounded, honest place. You don't need more polish. You need more permission. Permission to sound human. Permission to not get it perfect. Permission to be in the moment rather than controlling it. Because the voice that moves people isn't always the loudest. It's the one that feels the most alive. And when your voice becomes alive with presence, people listen. They lean in, they remember, not because you were flawless, but because you were real. Your voice is not just sound. It's an instrument of influence. It shapes relationships. It shifts energy. It changes atmospheres. Whether you realize it or not, every time you speak, you are creating impact. And the question is, what kind? You see, one of the great tragedies in the lives of many men is not that they don't have a voice, it's that they never learned how to use it responsibly. They were either taught to stay silent, suppress how they feel, say less, man up, or to dominate, be loud, be in charge, control the space. But neither of those teaches you how to honor your voice, and when a man doesn't honor his voice, he ends up hurting others or himself. Think about it. How many arguments could have been prevented if someone had paused, taken a breath, and chosen words that built understanding instead of destruction? How many relationships suffered because a man spoke in frustration, not in truth, because he didn't know how to say, "I'm hurt," so he said whatever, because he didn't know how to say, "I need you." So he pushed people away. You have power, not just in your body, not just in your actions, but in your voice. And with power comes responsibility. Every word you speak either adds life or takes it. It either opens the door to deeper connection, or it builds a wall you'll later wish you could tear down. So I want to ask you, what kind of man do you want to be? What kind of space do you want to create when you speak? Because the real test of a man's voice is not in how loud it can be, it's in what it leaves behind. Do your words heal or harden? Do they create clarity or confusion? Do they draw people closer or push them away? This is why self-awareness is so important. Why listening to yourself and to others is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Because once you recognize that your voice has the power to build a moment or break a heart, you start to choose differently. You start to speak with more humility, more thought, more care, and you realize something beautiful, that speaking well doesn't just make you more heard. It makes you more whole. Because when your voice aligns with your values, when your tone carries compassion, when your words carry truth, you become a man of integrity. And in a world full of noise, that kind of man is rare. So take this seriously. Your voice matters. Your words matter, even when no one else is watching, even when it feels like no one's listening. Speak as if someone's healing depends on it. Speak as if your future self will remember it. Speak like a man who knows the weight of his words and chooses to use them wisely. Because in the end, your voice won't be remembered for how loud it was. It'll be remembered for how deeply it was felt. You're still here. That says something. It says you're not just scrolling through life anymore. You're waking up to your own power, your own voice. And maybe for the first time, you're realizing that what you say matters. Not just for getting a job, not just for attracting someone, but for becoming the man you were always meant to be. And if no one's told you this before, hear me now, you are not invisible. Your voice is not too quiet. You do not need to sound like anyone else to be respected. You just need to show up as you, fully, intentionally, and truthfully. Because this world doesn't need more noise. It needs men who listen deeply, speak consciously, and lead with presence. And if this message spoke to something real in you, if it cracked something open, even just a little, then don't walk away quietly. Let your voice continue the conversation, like this video if something in it resonated. Comment below, let me hear your story. What hit home for you? Where are you struggling to be heard? Share this with another man who might need a reminder that his voice isn't broken. It's just been waiting for permission. And if you want to go deeper, if you want to build this kind of presence and connection, subscribe. This space is for you. We're not just trying to sound good. We're learning to become good men, good listeners, good leaders, and it all starts with how you speak. I'm glad you're here. Now let's keep building. Together,